Killing Bites was a Japanese action game that was based on the popular anime about humans who transform into beasts and battle it out in deadly underground tournaments. It was a real shame that Killing Bites got cancelled during development and never managed to see the light of day. Sadly, there is very little information surrounding the game. Other than it being an action title, there's little to know about the overall design and structure of the gameplay, but going from the premise and trailer, it might have been a sort of brawler, but that is just pure speculation, based on what has been popular on the handheld in the past. Both the planned PlayStation 4 and Vita versions got the axe, and when considering the trailer that was released, it's a real shame we never got to play what looked like a truly unique experience. If there is one type of game missing from the Vita's lineup, it has to be a Diablo-style dungeon crawler. Sure, we got the likes of Dungeon Hunter Alliance and Fantasy Hero, but nothing that never quite matched the overall quality of the series. This is where Warrior's Lair comes in, which was revealed alongside the handheld in 2011 and was originally known as Ruin. The game took on the dark fantasy aesthetic many have come to know and love from the genre, and offered a unique twist in the form of a content creation tool. It would have allowed players to create and edit their own dungeons to store loot in, which could then be a location for other adventurers to explore, providing it with a potentially endless amount of content. During the summer of 2013, the project was sadly cancelled, with no reason given as to why. Maybe the uncertain future of Sony's handheld played a part in the decision. Regardless of the how and why, it's a real shame we never got to experience Warrior's Lair, as it was clearly shaping up to be something special. Of all the games mentioned in this video, the one that had the least information released about it has to be Ghost Recon Final Mission. The only details in which we have to go on is a retailer listing from 2012 that alongside AC Liberation, a new entry in the Ghost Recon series was coming to Vita as well. Considering that AC Liberation released later that year, it's safe to assume that Final Mission was at least in consideration, if not early development at some point. Now there's not much for me to say about this game, other than it may have shared much in common with Future Soldier, another entry in the series that released for home consoles around the same time. With Unit 13 on the Vita, it proved that competent third-person shooters were a viable option when it came to creating games for the machine, so it is entirely possible that Ghost Recon would have been a huge success if it had ever seen the light of day. Now Final Fantasy Type 0 originally started life as a Jito 13, a mobile game set in the same world as Final Fantasy 13. As time went on, the project moved to the PSP due to the many technical constraints with mobile development, and was handed to the team who developed Crisis Core. Essentially an action RPG with several RTS elements thrown in, it was released on the PSP in 2011 and soon gained notoriety among Western Vita fans who petitioned for its release. A localization was originally announced in 2014, which confirmed the game was coming to Vita, only to be quickly amended to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One only, which did nothing but piss people off. Months later, a compromise was offered when Square Enix announced that their mobile companion game, Final Fantasy Agito, would be finding its way to Vita as an expanded version in 2015. Time went by without any word before the mobile game was shut down, and soon after the Vita version was cancelled as well. Type 0 or Agito for that matter would have been a great choice for the Vita and would have made a stellar addition to the already impressive lineup, but sadly it was just never meant to be. With the PlayStation Vita being region free, it has constantly been a source of new experiences coming out of Japan, one of those being Cities Shrouded in Shadow, which was shaping up to be something quite enjoyable. It's essentially a spin-off of the popular Disaster Report series that would see the player having to escape a city whilst being attacked by a range of Japanese monsters, such as an Evangelion and Godzilla. But sadly, after being announced, the project went silent for years before resurfacing as a PlayStation 4 only title. Despite the developer saying the Vita cancellation wasn't due to the hardware, it's hard to see why it was cancelled at all. Oddly, the PlayStation 4 version still only saw a release in Japan, although import reviews seem largely positive, making it a real shame we can't play it on the Vita, which in all honesty has been a really good home for several quirky Japanese titles like this. Bioshock on the PlayStation Vita was officially announced in 2011, yet for some time after it went completely silent as to what happened with the game, only resurfacing years later when Ken Levine took to Twitter and explained that he still wished the game could have been released, but that Sony and 2K just could never manage to work out a deal that suited them both. One of the most surprising aspects of this game is that the title was not going to be an FPS, but rather a turn-based tactics game, set before the events of the first entry. How this would have actually turned out is anyone's guess, and as you would expect, not all fans were excited to know that it would have deviated from what the series was well known for. But in my opinion, it was an intriguing concept, with the Vita already showing that it is more than capable of making these types of experiences viable on the go. The Banner Saga had quite the troubling time trying to be brought to life on the PlayStation Vita. Not only was it cancelled once, but twice during its development. The strategy RPG was originally announced to be coming to the system from the developers themselves before everything was stopped in 2015. The project would then be handed over to Code Mystics and would unfortunately experience the same fate in 2017. Now, various reasons surrounding its cancellation were noted, especially the several technical difficulties of trying to get it up and running on the system. It was a shame we never got to experience this critically acclaimed series on the Vita, but shortly after a port was announced for the Nintendo Switch, allowing you to play it on the go, albeit not on Sony's handheld platform. Not much at all is known about the Vita port of Nier. The series creator eventually shared information about the project, which was going to give new players the chance to experience the game, while simultaneously adding in some new extra content, making this version an expanded port which would have been perfect for the Vita. Sadly, the game never made it out of the planning phase, due to the team being busy with other projects at the time, and once they had wrapped up production of their main projects, they'd come up with so many ideas for a sequel, which would eventually turn into Nier Automata for the PlayStation 4, so the Vita port of the original would unfortunately remain a pipe dream. Now, Nier would have been perfect for the Vita. The console has become well known for the various ports of home console games, and Nier would have been a great addition to an already impressive lineup of games. Zone of the Enders was announced in 2011 by none other than Hideo Kojima himself, alongside revealing that the Metal Gear Solid HD collection would also be coming to the handheld. Whilst the latter title did eventually arrive, Zone of the Enders HD unfortunately never did. The home console versions received some negative feedback for looking bad and running poorly, which took nearly a year to receive a patch and only on the PlayStation 3 version, which likely led to getting the experience up and running on the Vita incredibly difficult. In addition, the sales of the PlayStation 3 and 360 versions were disappointing compared to Konami's expectations, which also likely had something to do with the decision to pull the Vita release. As with all the cancellations on this video, it's a real shame that the game never managed to hit the handheld, especially as the Vita is quite well known for various other mech action games such as Gundam and Macross that are both incredible in their own right. Developed by Gust, and quite possibly the most surprising cancellation has to be Chronos Materia. It was going to be a turn-based role-playing game that brought to the forefront the developer's strengths in character design, combat and crafting, coupling this with the intriguing time-travelling mechanic that would allow you to travel back and forth whilst carrying over your stats, and what you had was a really intriguing premise. Announced in 2013 to be released the same year, everything about the project went quiet until an announcement in 2016 that the game had been cancelled. Now, no concrete information as to why it was canned is available, and it's a shame this game never got to see the light of day. Although we have multiple other titles from Gust that are all great in their own right, none of them were designed from the ground up for the Vita or possess the intriguing aspects that Chronos Materia offered. Well, that does it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to click subscribe to be notified of videos in the future.